Let me begin with a story. And it was a dark, cold evening, and a group of men were huddled together, very unhappy, very frustrated. They were thinking that their careers were going to be coming to an end. They're looking down the barrel of being liquidated as professionals. And these men, they took hammers and they broke into a factory and started smashing the machines. They were professional, skilled men who were in the garment business producing cotton materials, flax materials into fabrics. And the machine age had arrived to power machines that could do the same thing. And they today are called Luddites. And we say, oh, Luddites, you know, they were against modernity, they were against machinery, and they lost, because now we have everything produced by machines. And we come forward to today, and we have someone as famous as Elon Musk, who worries about if the machines become fully autonomous, what will that mean for us as a species, basically? Are we putting ourselves into an area of difficulty? And so I think that is really one of the questions about AI that I want to look at in terms of, in the workplace, what will it mean for us? Now, I was mentioning to someone earlier, when I came here today, I came by taxi. My taxi driver was, I guess, 20s. He looked 20s. You know, didn't look much older than 20s. And I was thinking to myself, wow, you know, if I'm in my 20s and I'm driving a taxi, what do I think my life expectancy is for this career? I would say not good, unless he starts thinking about retraining. And that can probably apply to many of the things that we're facing in our companies and our businesses. So a little bit about Dale Carnegie very quickly. We're a corporate training company. We specialize in soft skills training. We started 107 years ago. We've been in Japan now 56 years, and we're a global organization. We're around the world. We've got offices in 100 plus countries. So we are hearing from businesses all around the world all the time, what are the things that are worrying them, and what are the things that they need, and how to deploy people is always one of those key things. Some of our coverage globally, and this makes a difference because when we work with companies, if they have a global operation and they want to take something they've found in one country and move it to another and have that work in that country and the way they train people, then we can do that for them. We do that across a lot of different activities. For example, we have one particular company we're working for out of Denmark was 34 countries. We delivered a particular program that they developed with us. So that coverage is very handy for companies. But anyway, what is AI? And AI as a term is quite old. I don't know exactly who John McCarthy was, who coined the term in 1956, but it tells you that term has been around for a long, long time. And at the table we had a discussion about the many types of AI there are. But generally speaking, as a broad coverage, we could talk about systems that make sense, comprehend, and learn as being a broad spectrum coverage of AI. I mean, many delineations of that, but let's stick with something fairly broad. Now, this is Exhibit A. Please have a good look at Exhibit A. Okay, this is Exhibit A. Everyone got that? Exhibit A. This is Exhibit B. Okay, A, B. Who thinks A was done by AI? Anyone think AI was done by AI? 2 people. Okay, who thinks B was done by AI? A few more people. Who doesn't think anything? Some people are putting their hands up here, right? Well, it's a bit of a trick question, because in fact, this one and this one were both done by AI this year, right? So it's quite shocking, isn't it? We know that by 2027 or earlier, we're going to have a lot of trucks being driven with autonomous driving, and cars as such. We know we're very far down the track on this, actually. Amazon Go, self-service, completely automated store is already operating. 2031, What will that probably mean? We'll probably have total automation around a lot of areas of retail. Probably we can have things delivered to our door as we want them, when we want them. Now, this is interesting. This is in the States, but this is in Japan. This is Akabane Station. Just this last few weeks, they've organized a kiosk. And on that kiosk, you can see, you can go on there and you can select items yourself, and then you pay for it by card, and then there are no staff there. Now, the big difference between what they've done with Amazon Go is we can all go into the store with Amazon Go simultaneously and buy stuff. But in this station, Akabane's kiosk, you notice all the people are waiting outside. You can only go in one at a time at this point. But still, it's here. It's here and it's in Japan. Now, they believe that by 2049, there'll be a bestseller written by AI, fiction. All right, that's going to be very interesting. By 2053, we'll have surgery being done using AI, being done automatically by robots. And by 2063, we will see a lot of our tasks taken over by machines. And I think in 120 years' time from now, probably everything will be controlled by machines that we need to have controlled. Now, this is very recent. I don't know if you've kept track of this, but English television anchor Zhang Zhao is now replaced by a complete facsimile robot. That is actually him, completely reproduced as a robot, exact replica robot. And the voice is also a perfect replica. And so it means that if you're in the news anchor business, and if they can reproduce your voice and reproduce the news feed and have a robot doing it, maybe there's not a big career in being a news anchor either. So if you go on to YouTube and find the broadcast, have a listen to his voice. It is eerily correct. It doesn't sound like a machine, right? And he doesn't look like a machine particularly, but that's a machine. And this is good news. Here's some good news. Anyone here who's studying kanji and sick of reading kanji, don't have to worry about that anymore. We've fixed that problem. Kanji is done, okay? Because in China, this book on the right here, Blockchain, The Untold Story, by an Indian author, real book, it's 100,000 words, about 300 plus pages, translated with 95% accuracy from English into Chinese in 30 seconds. Think about that. It took the editors another 2 weeks to deal with the 5% that was inaccurate and clean it up at this point today. So for non-fiction books, there's probably a big future here for this type of translation. So if you're a translator, or if you're a news anchor thinking of becoming a translator, that's probably not going to help, or the other way around. This is going to mean a huge difference in terms of our access to foreign languages. And think of the world that will open up to us in terms of what's available. So here are some statistics. There was this Oxford University Nomura Institute research that said they believe that potential for automation, we're going to see 49% of jobs in Japan in the next few years will have that potential. And in the States, PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they believe there are 38% of jobs in the States that can be automated, and they're talking about within 15 years. And so McKinsey believes that there's 50% of the activities we're doing which can also be taken over and automated. So the trend is there. We all know these things. Now, Japan tops the list here of full-time employee hours worked with the potential to be automated by the year 2030. And 52%. Now, if you think about that, what do we think about productivity in Japan? I don't think there's too many people in this room are going to say, oh no, Japanese productivity, fantastic, okay, in white-collar work. In blue-collar work, factories, fantastic, but in white-collar work, not so fantastic. And we all struggle with getting more productivity from our teams. So when you look at this, you think, well, that makes sense to me, that there's probably a good chunk of work that could be automated and make people more productive and more efficient, because the productivity levels are not so high here. In reality, there's still a lot of people staying up, or staying late in their companies, working ridiculous hours, long commutes, for no particular good reason in terms of productivity output. Maybe we could have a more balanced work-life balance here if we're able to do this. And what sort of works, George and I were talking before about what sort of work do we see being automated? And this is obvious, easily replicable tasks scream out for this. Things that are data process oriented, things that machines can easily analyze naturally. And combing for data. I was talking with Tobias before in the law about where that's going in terms of going through massive amounts of materials very quickly and pulling out things which for a lawyer would be the only things to really look at in building a case. So that's going to save a lot of hours, a lot of hard work, one part of the activity where they can spend the time more fruitfully somewhere else. And so unpredictable physical activity, that gets a bit harder for machines to replicate that, where it's not a set pattern. Interfacing with stakeholders, not too sure any of us particularly want to do a lot more interface with a machine in terms of stakeholders, probably want to deal with people. And expertise being applied to decision making. Well, we're talking before about recruiting as one of the examples where machines now are able to go through analysing resumes. They're able to do first round interviews with a camera on your face, analysing all your little idiosyncrasies, hidden messages, correlating these with what you're like as a person and feeding that to other people to make a broader decision. But at this point you probably don't want people being selected by a machine yet, but it may need that far away. And then managing and developing people. Well, there's a lot of managers and leaders in the room, so we're all good, okay, we're all safe. Everyone else, a bit of a problem, but the managers and leaders are good, maybe. But I'm still surprised that there's even 9% at this point in time that they think they could automate that part of the job. So this is looking at CEOs and looking at, are they planning to reduce headcount? Yes, we've got 30% of CEOs are planning to reduce headcount in this year because they believe that automation at some stage in their business will give them an opportunity to take the numbers down. Now that may be reducing headcount at a total, it may be able to free people up to do other things. It's not really clear, but that's what they're saying. We've got 30% can actually cut out as a result of these automation of technology. And we did a study, Dale Carnegie did a tailor-made study where we're comparing Japan and America, because our headquarters is America. So looking at what are some of the impact on AI in the workplace. So this is the result. We had 752 respondents. We had 45% were managers and above, and others were individual contributors. So we did it by email, and it's very, very recent. This is only a couple of months ago. So what do we find? What do people expect from AI? Will fundamentally change the way we work and live in the next 10 years. So Japan and America, quite similar, quite similar. What I find interesting in that particular slide on the right there, and it's similar to America too, there are 26% of people in Japan who obviously are either don't believe it's going to make a change or neutral on the idea. I find that quite surprising. I would think that everybody would think it's going to make a big change, but there's still quite a big proportion of the population who don't think it's going to make a big change. So I don't look at the 21% or the 50%. I look at the 26 and think, how could that be? Why would people not think it's going to make a big change in the way we work and live? And these are going to be, well, some change will be positive, some might be positive, but some of these people, 26%, don't think there's going to be any major change. That's a bit surprising to me. So that's the total on expected to be somewhat or extremely positive. 78% Japan, about the same for America. So are you worried about losing your job as a result of AI? Before we get to the results here, anyone want to put a hand up poll on worried about losing your job? No, don't worry. It's okay. We don't need to know. Keep that to yourself. But I think for everyone, if you're not worried about yourself, you're probably worried about your kids. You know, seriously, if you're not worried about yourself, you might say, you know, like Kurt and I, we've known each other for a while. Kurt's probably thinking, AI, not going to be a problem for me in my stage and age and stage. I'm good. But grandchildren, children, what's going to happen for them? That's where we're going to be thinking. And that is pertinent for all of us, I think. So how many people are worried? So in Japan, we've got extremely worried, we've got 15%, and moderately worried, about half, and then not worried at all, 40%. So that's close to 40%. That's quite interesting too. Is that a reflection of an aging society here, where many people are at a certain age and stage, they think that, well, I'll be retired, I won't be in the workforce, it's not really going to impact me, I'll be good. So, you know, I'm not going to worry about losing my job. By the time they get around to getting rid of my job, I will have retired anyway, it'll be fine. Yes, well, what about people who are a bit younger? What are they thinking? I'm wondering about that. And then we look at what do people expect from AI at their work. We compare Japan and America here. Somewhat positive about the potential to allow me to focus on more meaningful work. What do we got? 60%, 55%, about the same. And if you think about it, a lot of the work we do is very tedious. One of the big problems with leadership in Japan is that many Japanese leaders don't delegate very well. They're very poor time managers. That combination of poor time management, not delegating, means they're actually doing a lot of tasks which they actually shouldn't be doing. At this point in time, they're not delegating it to their employees. It may be, though, that technology catches up with Japanese leaders and managers, and those tasks get taken off their desk completely, and it's completely automated, which I would hope would free them up to do a lot more high-level things. I mean, ultimately, in our work, all of us, if we're leaders, we should be focusing on the things that only we can do. The things that are the most high value in our task, that's where we should be focusing. And we shouldn't be doing those tasks, we should be delegating those tasks to someone else. Done in the proper way, of course, not dumping, but proper delegation. So I think there's still some way to go for us to improve, and you know, people think that yes, it can help us to focus on more meaningful work. So this is the key diagram, I think. You've got social intelligence down this scale and creative intelligence across this scale here. So you've got the human advantage at that end, at the top of the emotional, social and creative, and at the bottom end you've got machine advantage, which is very basic, okay? So this is somewhere we're going to be on this graph forever. And this is going to be at which point does this machine advantage move up that scale? It will move up the scale, I don't think anyone doubts that. How long will it take? What will it entail? So obviously machine for coordinating, controlling work, yes, it can do that very, very well, very efficiently. But, you know, shape the strategy and lead innovation. That's a little bit more finite around the creativity side, the human condition side, knowing your people, creating an environment for brainstorming. Now, a lot of cases in the training we do, we find that the brainstorming methodologies that companies use are particularly bad. They're not very effective in terms of getting people's ideas out. So even at this current stage, even with the human dimension, we're not maximizing our innovation capacity because the way we brainstorm is not done properly. So there's still some scope to go there, and before machines even catch up, I think we've got a fair bit to advance the program for ourselves. And then solve problems and collaborate. So again, that problem solving that's not necessarily linear, something that's not necessarily easily made into a logical process, then getting other people to cooperate. We know when we're running projects that the key of the project isn't the Gantt chart. It isn't Trello. It isn't all these machines that produce beautiful things to pump information in and it's going to work out your project management. That is not the issue with project management. Project management is always the issue with people. So when I talk about project management, people are always thinking, oh, what sort of software can we use? What sort of things can we pump the information into? That's easy. The problem is the people. So this collaborate part sounds, oh, okay, collaborate, sure. Not so easy. The bigger machine you have in terms of the company, the harder it is to get collaboration. We know we have silos that don't cooperate. We have silos that are at war with each other. We have people who won't coordinate and cooperate with us, even in our companies. So this is still going to be an issue that machines will not be able to solve very, very easily. And then develop people and community. So what's the difference between a manager and a leader? A manager is going to lose their job before a leader. So if you've got manager on your card, I'd switch that now to leader. Okay? But what does a manager do? A manager manages processes. What does a leader do? A leader manages processes and builds people. This management of process, in many cases, I think, can be automated, and managers will have big tasks on their desk taken away from them, and the machine will do that. But the develop people part, and community, this is not something a machine can do easily yet. So I think we've still got some way to go there, and we still have a big advantage in the human area as a species. So technology, we know, it impacts corporate culture, well, obviously, positively, negatively, and we all know that. We know that, as I gave that example at the beginning with the Luddites, it negatively impacted them because they lost their jobs. If you look at any technological advance, if you're with Nokia and you're king of the castle of mobile phones, and that horrible call, that ring call they had, right? Everyone know it, right? Everyone had a Nokia. Who owns a Nokia today? Nobody. That's a technological advance that completely killed that company. So we know that. We know these things are going on. So, but what does it do for the culture? What does it do for the people in the business? Now, obviously, a lot of people are going to be fearful about the future. And this is the point. Do we have the difference between being aware and being prepared? We are aware of AI and its movement forward. Are we prepared for it? Now, one of the interesting things, some of the research I did, there was a very good EU study on AI in Japan, and also another very good study by the Economist Intelligence Unit on AI in APAC, that one of the interesting things they pointed out there was that, yes, leaders are thinking about AI, but they're not thinking about involving their HR people in the strategy for AI. Which is a bit curious, isn't it? When you think about AI is going to impact the people, but they're thinking of it from more of a hardware process orientation rather than a people orientation, and thinking about, right, I need to get together with the AI team, with the HR team, and think about what this will mean for our team in the future. How will we be hiring people? How will we be developing people? How will we be communicating with people? So that part hasn't quite been done yet. So think about your own companies. Is your HR department fully bore, hardcore, working on an AI strategy for the people? Probably not yet, I would guess. So this is something for all of us to think about. We may be aware of AI, but are we actually prepared for it within our teams, structurally within our companies, built into our strategies for what we're going to do with our people going forward? A bit of a gap there still. And so this is very interesting. This is Max from the UK working for Amazon, one of those big Amazon warehouses, and he felt like I'd become a version of the robots that I was working with. Now, Amazon puts wristbands on their staff in these big warehouses, so they can direct you. If you're looking for a particular parcel or something you're trying to find, the machine will say, go down to aisle 17, it's on the K section or whatever it might be. So this is already being instructed by the machine of where you have to go. There's no person telling you, oh, okay, Max, could you go down to aisle 17 and look for the K section? You'll find, no, the machine is telling Max what to do. And so Max didn't like it much, right? He's a former employee. Now, that's the point. Are you going to be happy with the machine telling you what to do? Now, a lot of us are bosses here, so we're quite happy telling others what to do. But are we going to be happy being told what to do? And are our staff going to be happy being told what to do by a machine? So, just bring these up. For human resources, those automation of conversational interfaces. This is where you're getting chatbots having conversations with staff around issues. Right? rather than people. No one has evolved. The chatbot is fully geared up to give you information. And then the candidate sourcing. So they're ploughing through, looking at candidates, saying, okay, we will find them here, look in this database. This will be where we'll start the pool. We'll do the resume screening. Now I've got in some fine print there, there's a couple of American companies listed there, which I actually haven't used, but I've just listed a couple that show that this is already happening with the resume screening. They're screening them, as I say, they're using the video as well. They're trying to whittle down and speed up and make it cheaper, the process of getting to a stage of only seeing the better candidates. So that's already with us, right? And so sentiment analysis, this is where they're looking at the camera. And we were chatting at the table before about, I think it was last week, was it? You're at the AI conference, and they were looking at your mood. The machine was reading your face, and Lucas was permanently happy, he told me, according to the machine, because of the way he had a facial expression. So, the machine is looking at your face, looking at your eyes. When you say something, it's looking at what your eye is doing, it's analysing that pattern, and it's coming up with a conclusion about you, which is feeding into the process of you getting a job, which is very 1984 to me. I mean, this thing we see in China now, taking shots of everyone's faces, having points for being a good socialist man and woman, and missing out on travel and lots of other things if you're not, trying to control the whole population. This is very real. It's happening right now, and it won't take them long to capture the whole population. And what does that mean? But this sentiment analysis is another stage of that. And then predictive models, trying to work out who's going to quit. Who do we think, from the information we've gathered from all parts of the company, who's going to quit? Who do we want to develop? Who are the people going to be the high potentials? Now, currently, we might be making those decisions about high potentials, but maybe the list we're getting of the high potentials may be machine generated, not by us. So this could be another facet. And so we look at the management side. Look, there's a lot of work we do as leaders, managers, which is very process-oriented, which we very happily, and there's lots of stuff I've got to do, I'd very happily not have to do it. If an AI could do it for me, I'd be very pleased. Take it away now. And so there are things we can do. And also, we talk about Japanese productivity not being particularly high. We may be able to come up with some metrics to help people to be more productive. And certainly the machine will provide that. I don't know about coaching. Are we prepared to be coached by machines? Maybe we are. I don't know. At a certain level, if you've done any sort of compliance training in the last few years, what is it? You go on, you log on, you go through these different scenarios, which two of these scenarios seem incredibly reasonable, and then you choose the wrong one, and the machine makes you redo it, and there may be coaching attached to that. This is why you're not going to be scored on that because of this factor, blah, blah, blah. So that's a machine telling you how to pass your compliance test. No people from HR department involved, no coaching on that. The machine is coaching you. And then performance management. Well, at the moment, we're doing the performance management. Maybe the performance management might be weekly. Maybe the machine is giving you a readout weekly on how you're doing based on certain metrics rather than once a year, or in some cases twice a year. And some companies have gone away from it completely. Maybe the machine will have some feedback for us on how we're doing. If the machine is surveying your people continuously through different mechanisms, maybe it could just be as simple as looking at their faces. Think about that. The machine is looking at their faces and working out how they're feeling, and they're feeding to you, your team are not very happy. Maybe you don't even know. Maybe you're too busy. Maybe you're just full bore work, and you're like, don't even look at the team because I'm too busy. I'm looking at my own work. You're not even noticing that someone's unhappy, someone's got a problem. I mean, realistically, as the boss, that's what we should be doing. But maybe the machines will be doing that for us and telling us, hey, you better talk to George. He's not looking very happy. There's something going on maybe at work or at his home life. He might need some help. Might be good to have a lunch at George and just see how he's feeling. I mean, we should be doing that, but maybe we won't be the only ones doing that. And so, learning and development. So when you do onboarding, there may be a whole raft of learning we go through about processes in the company, like now probably we go through, this is how our company works, here are the different divisions, here are the structures, here are the individuals, this is what we cover. That might all be done automatically. Maybe we get that whole onboarding process of information where we have to log on and we have to pass a test on did we understand these questions, and 4 questions, and B and C both look correct to me and hard to tell which is which. I mean, that type of typical thing we're all doing now for certain things may become standard. And then working out the content management, saying, okay, based on where the industry is going, based on the recruiting we're going to need to do, based on how the industry is developing, based on skill sets that are needed, what do we need to do in terms of coming up with content to start educating people? Maybe we need to start, they're going to flag, we're going to need something or other, let's start investigating that, not as a committee, not as a bunch of leaders, but the machine will say, here are some skill sets that need working, here's some curated information perhaps on the best practice for that particular area of skill set, and then maybe that's what's given to the trainers, and then they develop training from that, or maybe the machine creates the training based on that, and then maybe people deliver, or maybe people don't deliver it. As a training company, I hope that the people keep delivering it, but I'm not sure about that at some point in time. But that will get to a point where it may be very highly personalised, and then doing assessments. So the machine's doing the assessments, where again, we're looking at people's capacity, skill sets, knowledge to move up the line. So Stephen Hawking, he's talking about, the most caring, creative, and supervisory positions, he believed, would not be replaced by autonomous learning. He didn't see that AI would be doing that, basically. And probably could be true. Now, this is interesting. This is a survey we did on hard skills for America and Japan. And as you see, the soft skills, 77%, this is the skills most needed in the future to avoid job losses to AI. And that makes sense, because these are not programmable, repetitious, heavily process-driven tasks. They're very individual tasks. It's tone of voice. It's patience to listen to someone. It's knowing your team members, understanding what's going on. With my team at the moment, I have one person whose husband is in hospital with dementia. He left the house, fell down, hit his head, had to have emergency surgery, brain surgery. So he's in hospital, she's working, but she's going to the hospital all the time. I have another team member whose father has dementia, and she's going through this terrible process of trying to find a place for him, so she's often not at work. Now, I can empathise with that. My mother also, before she passed away, had dementia. I understand what that means. So I don't know whether the machine's going to be too empathetic to that type of problem. So I think soft skills is the human dimension of helping people become motivated, engaged. And we found that for engagement, there are 3 things that mattered. Obviously, relationship with your direct manager, because we know that people leave bosses, they don't leave jobs. Relationship with your direct manager. We know that the belief in the direction the senior management is taking the company is another one. And the third one is pride in the organisation. Well, belief in the organisation and where it's going, where senior leadership's taking it, is based around their communication skills around the vision, where we're going, and their ability to be able to, in the top executive floor, to know that they've been able to communicate that, cascade it all the way down to the bottom, most recently joined, most junior person, that they know what the vision of the company is. That's soft skills. If it's also pride in the organisation, that's where the typical silo battles, the battle should be with the rivals outside the company, not internally. And that's where our skill is to cut that stuff out and have people have an environment where they can work together and be proud of their organisation. And the trigger point for engagement was feeling valued. You think about that. Think about, no survey now, but just think about your own workforce. Think about the people, or think if you're the person who's got a boss guiding you. Do you feel valued? And has it been communicated to you that you feel valued? Has that happened recently? Has it ever happened? For a lot of us who grew up in a different era, bosses didn't do that. Bosses told you what to do, and by golly, you better jump when the boss says so and get to it. None of this nice, cozy, how you're feeling sort of stuff. That's one era. We're in a different era now. And particularly the younger generation, the soft skills ability to trigger engagement through helping them feel valued is going to become very critical. So that's going to be a very key soft skill for all of us going forward. Now, particularly as people start to worry about machines taking their work away, to make them say, no, no, you have a place here, you have a job here, you are valued, you're an important part of this whole operation. Now, these are the things where soft skills are going to be most important. Now, look at the ones here. You've got USA and Japan. Look at the ones where Japan is doing better on this survey than the US, right? It's things like empathy. That makes sense, doesn't it? I think Japanese culture is probably more empathetic in a lot of ways than Western culture. Things like creativity. Now, that's very interesting. Japanese see the soft skills relation to creativity. I find that interesting. Teamwork. Well, yes, Japan's very group-oriented, so team makes a lot of sense. And then communication skills. Well, you know, there's a lot of communication goes on in Japan. I mean, one of the first things you learn in Japan is about spinach, right? Everyone knows about spinach, right? Horenso, right? Hokoku, report, right? Renraku, make contact. Sodan, okay? Get some collaboration, get some advice here on what to do. That's been around for a long time, and that's not surprising to me that that would be in there. But look at critical thinking. I find this a bit interesting. You know, creativity gets a big score, but critical thinking doesn't get a big score. Now, what does that tell us around Japan and the education system here? I'm a product of the Japanese educational system in the sense of I have a master's degree from Jochi University here in Japan, and I spent, you know, I spent 2 years studying Japanese and then 2 years doing a master's degree. And one of the things you often hear in Japan is that the creative dimension isn't really well developed, although people see here it's very important, but the critical thinking part, not so well developed either. Trying to choose between options, which is the best option. So we're often asked to come in and teach Japanese team members how to do critical thinking, because they're very good at collecting all the information, tremendous on collecting all the information, which today you can do on your phone, by the way. You don't even need to worry about what you used to do in the old days, do a search on it, it's there. But the what do you do with it part, not so great. So this is going to be one of the things that I think Japan's got to develop. But this is where they see what's going to be the most important skills going forward. Maybe they think that AI will do the critical thinking for them. I'm not sure. It gets a very low score. And so here we are. Where will they look for new skills? Well, overwhelmingly, they're looking to us. They're looking to us and our companies to provide the skills to help them reskill to take on a different environment under AI. They're not going to do much around sourcing it themselves. They're not going to do that much around, you know, going to some college to get some training. They hope that the company is going to develop them. The company, remember, leaders, manage process, and build people. They're looking us to build the people. So again, it comes back to that awareness and preparation. And do we have a strategy around how we're going to build the people internally to prepare them for an AI world, because that's what they're expecting. And are we doing that? And are we involving the professionals in HR, or are we getting HR professionals into the company who can do that? Because for a lot of Japanese companies, HR is more of a police function than a development function at this point in time, in many cases. Probably I'd say majority of cases. So that needs to probably be looked at. Now, it can be monitored for purpose of tracking, evaluating and improving productivity, right? So this is round to directors and above, you know, extremely or somewhat likely to apply. Half of Japanese directors and above believe that the machine will be doing the tracking of people's performances and productivity to improve that. Individuals, only 30% are thinking that. So the people who work for companies are not thinking this is coming, but the people who are the leaders think it's coming more than those who are on the receiving end are likely to be. So that's something we might have some conversations around that too, that what that means for evaluation, productivity processes. And then this is again, probability of someone quitting from analysis of their email communication activities. The machine is analyzing what we're doing. What's the probability of that? Definitely probably will apply. Well, America's very high, Japan's, but leaders are about half, and individual contributors about 22%. And that's probably to do with a lot of Japanese IT is not that well developed yet, and probably they haven't come across these tracking possibilities, but certainly everything is findable in the internet. Everything is findable in email systems, and certainly we can expect there will be possibly tracking. Now, I know in the finance business, George and I used to work in the finance business. You used to have to take 2 weeks off every year in certain parts of the business. So if there's anything untoward been going on, your absence would then let it come out. You couldn't hide it. And so that probably will have to go away, and they'll have other systems for checking what's going on. But this will, as far as the leadership goes, probably or definitely will apply. So what does that mean for the communication of our people? And what about employees' plans, career path? You know, extremely or somewhat comfortable with using AI for that? Well, leaders, 60% are comfortable with that. And that's probably, I think, in Japan, a case of many leaders. One of the things they hate every year is the performance assessment, the performance conversation. Actually, the people getting it don't like it either, but they don't like doing it. So they're probably thinking, oh, great, I can ship all that out to the machine and I won't have to do it. So hooray for me. Maybe, I don't know. But that's a very high number, I think, that, you know, America too, very high. And then, you know, the planning, career development, again, you've got half of people expecting this is going to come. So how are we going to communicate that? How will it work? How will they know that the algorithm is going to be correct? How will they know they can trust the machine? You know, you can open up the box, but there's nothing in there that's going to help you to know, is this correct or not? You can't go back in and decide if this is actually functioning properly or not. You have to trust the machine. So how do we go about helping people to trust the machine? And then what can leaders do? So we look for the both the potential and the impact of AI in the workplace and start thinking about, yes, I'm aware it's coming, but how do I prepare for that? What am I going to do? What steps do I need to take? What is the trust? If people feel everything they're doing is being watched, what's going to happen to the trust? What's going to happen to the culture? What happens if people do start losing their jobs? What's going to be for those who are left? What is it going to mean for whole industries? And then prepare processes. So some things can be automated, which are very boring, sort of drudge work. Yes, maybe we can move that off people's desks. What would they be? What processes have we got that we could actually start doing that? We did in my company, we did a process audit of our systems a few weeks ago, because we were looking at this. We're saying, you know, it's a bit like you build up things on a boat, you know, mollusks and things attach themselves to boats and has to get cleaned off every few years so you can sail your boat. It's the same thing. We get mollusks attaching themselves to our systems. Like you, without knowing it, you start adding systems and building things out, and before you know it, you've got these very elaborate systems which are probably not very logical, functional, or efficient, but they've just grown over time because there was no particular thought about how we would develop that. It just grew. So this is where it's probably useful to go back in and look at the processes, look at the systems and say, well, can we actually automate that and free people up to do more high quality work? Something that a machine cannot do, and things that they don't have time enough to do now. Can we do that? And then prepare people. So again, what's our education process for reskilling people? If you're that young man in the taxi today bringing me here, and you know, in a very short space of time, taxis are automated, well, he's got to be reskilled because he won't have a job. In his case, he's got a whole career ahead of him. Is that taxi company thinking about that? I doubt it. So, you know, what about in your company where there may be people doing very process-oriented work? When I ran the National Australia Bank, we had a whole process section there. People loved it. I could never do it. It'd kill me, but they loved it. Very detail-oriented people, all that process, they thought it was terrific. Me, automate the whole thing. Just automate the whole thing and use those people somewhere else. But they loved it. This is the point. Some people like very detail-oriented work, and they will see their jobs disappear. That's a proportion of the population. Can we get to some other detail-oriented work at a higher value, perhaps? When I was at the Shinsei Bank, they took all of the processing out of the branches and stuck it into one building in Meguro. So the branches only had salespeople and leaders. That was it. There was no processing done at all in the bank. And when you do housing loans, for example, if you've ever done a housing loan, the amount of paperwork for a housing loan is absolutely incredible. They were automating that. This is going back quite a while, because with paper, it goes to me, then it goes to Tobias, then it goes to Kurt, then it goes to George, then it goes to Lucas, and each of these guys have to wait till Tobias is finished. But they were scanning everything so everyone could work on the information simultaneously. Tremendous productivity improvement, and meant that a lot of people were freed up to not have to do that very tedious work, to do other things. So we've got to be thinking about what are the right skills, how do we train the people, what are we prepared, are we ready for this? And this is a Dale Carnegie quote, keep your mind open to change all the time, welcome it, court it. It is only by examining and re-examining your opinions and ideas that you can progress. So he made that quote a long, long time ago. So my takeaway on this would be, we know it's coming, and I'm still surprised there's a big 26% there who don't think it's coming. That surprises me. But I think we all know it's coming. You're here because you have an interest in this topic. Fine. We have awareness. What about our preparedness? Are we fully tooled up to work on that? What more can we do? So this will come up for the next Jesper Cole event coming up. I'll give a quick preview for that before we go into Q&A. I'll leave this screen up to remind everybody of the next event. But I would like to leave you with this thought before we get into Q&A. Awareness is not preparedness. Let's be prepared. Thank you very much.